How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 3.
Greetings, conversationalists. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425 should you wish to be on the program. You are more than happy to be on the program. I keep seeing people circulating this stuff about how people are going to jail for burning pride flags or defacing the sidewalks painted with the rainbow stripes. I find it all stupid. Just so you understand my position here, sending someone to jail for 15 years for burning a pride flag is absurd. You know, the kids in Washington State, they were punished by the state for defacing with e-scooters the crosswalk with the pride flag. A guy in Iowa went to jail for 15 years for burning a pride flag, and people are sending this to me and said, "How is that legal when you can't burn the American flag? This is unjust." It is perfectly legal for you to go burn a pride flag. You can go buy your own pride flag and burn it. And you're not going to go to jail unless you start a wildfire or something with it. You can buy an American flag and burn it. You're not going to go to jail. The issue here is not that he burned a pride flag, the guy in Iowa who got 15 years. It's that he literally ripped it down from a church and burned their pride flag. I still think it's absurd he got 15 years for it, or that the kids were punished, but the kids defaced public property. It's absurd. But it's different than buying your own flag. The punishments are absurd, but it actually is different. These two things are not the same, and you got to be able to distinguish them. Now, speaking of, I want to take your phone calls here in just a minute, 877-973-7425, but we got to talk about crime in D.C. Crime is actually down. The D.C. Police Union has released the stats. Let me read you these. Robberies in the last 14 days. The last 14 days, robberies down 42%. Assault with a deadly weapon down 13%. Carjackings down 85%. Car thefts down 24%. Violent crime down 25%. Property crime down 10%. Total crime down 11%. Carjackings are down 85% in Washington, D.C. A progressive white woman from Chicago, there is word that the National Guard is going to go to Chicago. And this white woman, good white woman, an affluent white female urban liberal, showed a picture of the massive bruise from her broken arm. And she tweeted, "Mr. President, I got my arm broken in a carjacking, and I still don't want federal troops in Chicago policing crime." White people, progressive white people, want the crime. At this, it's becoming more seemingly obvious that these white people and their allies are kind of pro-murder. I mean, we hadn't had a murder in Washington, D.C. in 12 days now. It's probably going to happen again at some point, probably. But these people are like, bring back the murderers. What Donald Trump is doing is bad. I mean, La Resistance is out. The liberal guy, Shadi Hamid, he is writing in the Washington Post. He's a Washington Post columnist, a research professor of Islamic studies at Fuller Seminary. He's a big progressive. And he's writing that, yeah, crime is bad in D.C., but that doesn't make what Donald Trump is doing right. Literally, he writes, it's possible for Trump to be right and wrong at once. This is one of those times. Perhaps what's most troubling isn't just Trump's authoritarian impulses, but our own democratic institutions' inability to address the underlying problems that make his solution more attractive. If D.C.'s elected officials had been more effective at tackling crime and homelessness, would Trump's intervention have been as appealing? Our failure to govern well creates the conditions for someone else to govern badly, and that's where we find ourselves today. The lure of the strong man might be compelling, even if I found myself compelled, but that's all the more reason to resist it. Our first instincts tell us something important, but they're always incomplete. You got that? We must resist Donald Trump because he's doing a good job cracking down on crime. That literally is his point. The uncomfortable truth is that democracy asks more of us than authoritarianism ever could. It demands that we live with uncertainty, the messiness of compromise, and the slow grind of institutional change. The strong man offers clarity and speed. Democracy offers the promise that we might eventually muddle our way to something better. That's not an easy sell, but this is also why democratic citizenship matters most. Not when our institutions work as well as they might hope, but when they fall short of what we might expect. The test of a democratic society is whether it can avoid the temptations of authoritarianism when times are hard. The question isn't whether we'll be tempted. We will be. The question is what we do with the temptation when it comes. His entire argument in his column is that they should be fine with crime in D.C. because Trump stopping crime is a bad thing. You know, you got Al Sharpton now back. Al Sharpton is a one-trick pony. All he knows to do is to scream racism.
And the data would say that that's where they're needed. You know, I preached in Washington, D.C. yesterday at Howard University. People feel they're under siege. They are being picked on. When you look at the cities the president has named, all of those cities have declining crime rates, and all of them have black mayors. There's the racial element that he's race dog whistling here.
It's race dog whistling here. That's right. It's all race. He's going after black cities. That's it. No, actually, he's going after blue cities and blue states. He's going after Democrat-led cities in Democrat states because he knows what they're going to do because they can't help themselves. They can't help themselves. Look at the protests by the good white progressives in Washington, D.C. You got now, you got Wes Moore coming out there, the governor of Maryland, claiming that Baltimore is somehow some sort of state that actually is okay to, or a city is okay to go to.
But since I've been the governor the past 2.5 years, we have now cut the number of vacant homes in half in the city of Baltimore. The state of Maryland is having amongst the fastest drops in violent crime anywhere in the United States. The city of Baltimore, the last time the homicide rate was this low, I was not born yet. That we're watching a population increase that has now been ranked the 4th best place for college graduates. And so we are seeing a resurgence that it would be great if the president would actually come and spend time and learn about what we are doing instead of just throwing jabs at me and jabs at the city of Baltimore from the Oval Office.
You know, Baltimore is not a safe place to go. The amount of gaslighting, just think about where Donald Trump has the Democrats right now. They've got to gaslight and claim that it's not as bad as we all know it is in these places. Look at the amount of energy they spent on claiming that there was no crime problem in Washington, D.C. And now they're all out saying, well, okay, there is a crime problem, but what Donald Trump is doing is bad. Now you got the governor of Maryland trying to claim that Baltimore is some great place to go, that they've had massive improvement in crime in Baltimore. A massive improvement in crime in Baltimore still makes it a third world hellhole. You understand, right? I mean, any improvement in Baltimore is necessary, but just because they've improved it some doesn't mean they've solved the problem. The gaslighting from the Democrats on this stuff is absurd. And yet it's all they got. It's the best they can do is to try to pretend away the problem that Donald Trump is exposing, because if they were to acknowledge the problem, they would have to acknowledge progressive failures. And God forbid they acknowledge progressive failures. Let me hop to the phones before I get out of time here. Mike in Dayton, Ohio, you're going to be up next. Thanks for being patient. Mike, how are you?
Doing well. Thanks, Eric, for taking my call.
Sure.
Basically, I just wanted to ask you, is there any way you could discuss why the Democrats are doing what they're doing? It's got to be multinational corporations, the money, the foreign money, because these people are not stupid. But why are they so radically different than the Republicans? They don't want the Republic. They want something different. They want socialism. They want us to drive our labor force down to where we're making a fraction of what we're earning now. I see it in the trucking. I'm a truck driver, and I'm making probably 100% less of what I was earning, 50% less of what I was earning in 2016. And it's because of all the foreign drivers and everything else.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I don't think it's because the Democrats are taking money from foreign governments. That's too easy. I think that the Democrats worship at the altar of diversity. And they really believe if they seed industries with a diverse class of people, they can foster more diversity. So they allow in the foreign diverse truck drivers. That's going to build a market of domestic diverse truck drivers. They value diversity above all things. I think that's actually what it is. I think the Democrats worship false gods. I think the Republicans worship different false gods, but they all worship idols. And the idol of DEI for the Democrats is the idol of ESG. They're all tied together that they're going to somehow be able to deploy policy to build a utopia on the planet. And their utopia is going to be highly diverse. And that this country is systemically racist, and so advantages must be given to those outside the preferred race in order to subvert the dominant paradigm in the language they use. It is a fundamental by faith belief of the Democratic Party. That's where this goes. Fundamental by faith belief. And that by faith belief is one that most Americans don't buy in, which is why ruination is coming for the Democrats. Mark in Jacksonville, Florida, welcome to the Eric Erickson Show. Mark, how are you?
I'm living the dream, Eric. I hope you are.
I am.
Hey, I got a question for you. First off, I am a Trump supporter. I support what he's doing in D.C., but I haven't heard anybody ask this or talk about this. If I recall correctly, back in around the January 6th issue, people were critical of him for not calling out the National Guard at that time, and he seemed to respond that that's not in my purview. I can't do that. But yet, here we are now, and he is sending in the National Guard. And I understand D.C. is different than the other 50 states. I get that part. But I'm just kind of curious, what makes this instance different than his ability to call him in or not call him in back on January 6th?
If I recall, Mark, they ultimately were called in several states, including Maryland, Virginia, and North Carolina, and others sent reinforcements, but he was not asked immediately to send in the National Guard. We know actually from the hearings that they had in Congress, and not the set up spin hearings, but the actual like the deep dive. We know the problem came from the Pentagon and not the president. There actually is the outside investigation showed a massive screw up at the Pentagon where multiple different parties wanted to call the National Guard. They were overruled because they hadn't actually gotten a command request for the National Guard following the chain of command, and they didn't want to look like they were falling outside the chain of command. It was a massive cluster from the Pentagon. The president himself never got the direct message to send the National Guard because it went to the Pentagon. It didn't go directly to the president, and eventually they came out. That's really, truthfully, what happened is a communications breakdown delayed them going, but they ultimately went. In this case, for law enforcement in the Capitol, though, the president is allowed to deal with it. He's allowed to take over the D.C. police, which he's done, and he's supplemented them with the National Guard. And interestingly enough, the National Guard is not doing law enforcement. They're just standing around. They're standing in high tourist areas, keeping the criminals at bay. They're not actually engaged in the law enforcement, but by standing in the areas where the tourists are, they've driven the criminals into the areas where the police actually are engaged in law enforcement, and it's working symbiotically to cut crime. Welcome back. It is Eric Erickson here. Again, phone number 877-973-7425. Should you want to be on the program? Boy, the president riling everybody up at the White House today. He says he's not a dictator, and no, he's not. He's democratically elected. I did see that some Democrats are rushing back to saying he's not going to leave office in 2028. And in fact, this is now how the Democrats are justifying their redistricting efforts.
Congressman, how far in California we've seen Governor Gavin Newsom push through this effort that could redraw the districts there and benefit Democrats? How far should Democrats take this now, in your mind, in other states?
Well, if we want to save democracy in America and not let Trump do whatever he pleases, perhaps even postponing future elections, we have to do all that we can. And I commend in the strongest terms Governor Newsom, my colleague Zoe Lofgren, who's the dean of the California delegation, and former Speaker Nancy Pelosi. We have to get those 5 seats because the path forward out of Texas is not a happy path. In Missouri, we could lose 1 or 2 people. In Indiana, Vice President Vance has been demanding that both Democrats, so that there'll be no Democratic representation in the state of Indiana. In Ohio, we're under court order. I would see 2, maybe 3 people there. And then in Florida, always competing with Texas to be the worst and often winning, we could lose 3 to 5 seats there. That's why it's so important that we contest these seats in Texas. Just because they're nominally plus 10 Trump districts, that's the high watermark. That doesn't mean that a strong Democratic candidate can't compete. And that's what I'm about, is working with other people to try to narrow the number of seats he goes out of Texas with.
You got that? It could be the end of elections. It could be no. You're going to keep having elections. The deranged madness of the Democrats right now in this sort of stuff is just kind of wild to me, that they keep telling themselves this stuff. They're working themselves into a violent frenzy over whether or not we're going to have elections. We're going to keep having elections. In fact, we'll have elections next year, and the Democrats might do well because it's an off-year election, and yet they'll then tell themselves again that we're not going to. It's just weird and annoying. The Eden Pure Thunderstorm is not annoying. It's actually a great device. It actually cleans up the air. In fact, I used one on my back porch this weekend. Why? Because, I left the window open and used the smoker, and so it got a little, it smelled like ribs. It was kind of delicious at the back porch. My wife was less than thrilled, though. But the Eden Pure Thunderstorm wiped out the odors. You can get 3 of them, save $200 at EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is ERIC3, ERICK, the number 3, no space, ERIC3 at EdenPureDeals.com. They really do work. You get 3 of them. They're an air purifier, so they get rid of dust, they get rid of pollen, they get rid of pet dander, they get rid of 99.9% of bacteria and viruses that float through them because they generate plasma, and then they generate ozone as well that gets out into the air and it eliminates the odor. So I had a window cracked, didn't realize it. My smoker, the smoke got into our back porch, closed up the window, turned on the Eden Pure Thunderstorm. No smoky odors. Doesn't smell like ribs back there anymore, just clean air. EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is ERIC3. Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number 877-973-7425. I need to talk about a story that's actually from my neck of the woods. Dunwoody, Georgia. A couple there got video. This is so just bear with me here. I know that I'm weird on my sleeve, evangelical Christian, all that, been in seminary. By the way, somebody tell Guy Richard I'm planning on coming for the Derek Thomas class in January. I really take seriously, and you don't have to be a person of faith. You can be an atheist, but just take it as good advice. Love your neighbor. Do unto others as you would have them do to you, the golden rule. You know, every religion on planet Earth has a version of what Christians call the golden rule. Now, in every other religion, I find this one very interestingly. You know, Tim Keller The great theologian used to say, if you say all religions are the same, you've clearly never studied them. They have some similarities. And in fact, in every religion except Christianity, the golden rule is don't do to people what you don't want them to do to you. It's a negative relationship. It is a don't do something. So avoid doing to people what you want people to avoid doing to you is how every religion out there except Christianity does it. With Christianity, with it's reverse. It's a positive action. Affirmatively do to other people what you want them to do to you. And it doesn't matter whether they reciprocate or not. People can treat you horribly, but don't treat them horribly. And it all comes to love your neighbor. You are to love your neighbor. What the great two commandments that summarize the 10 commandments is love God and love your neighbor. And whether or not you're a believer, whether or not you're a person of any faith, it's just good advice to treat your neighbors the way you want your neighbors to treat you. And in particular, your actual neighbors. Just a buddy of mine hates his neighbor, and I can't really blame him. They live next to each other. They're not in a homeowners association, and the next door neighbor. He's a good old boy, redneck, and his yard looks like a third world war zone. He's got cars. He lets the grass grow. The music is loud. There are beer cans in the yard, and he just doesn't care. And my buddy, who's his neighbor, is like he's working on his cars. It's a hobby. The yard is a wreck. It's just embarrassing to have people over at their house because you're dealing with this guy in the yard with his music loud all day, smoking cigarettes, drinking beer, leaves the beer cans everywhere. It's just he's like, I gotta remind myself to love my neighbor. And also, if you knew the guy's background and story, you'd kind of understand. And it's kind of sad, the backstory there. And my friend it's so frustrating. He's difficult to deal with. He's hot tempered and on, but gotta love my neighbor. Yeah, you do. When it's your physical neighbor in particular, when like my neighbors know, most of my neighbors leave a key with me. I'm trying to think, 3 different neighbors. I've got their keys. If something's gone wrong and they're out of town, they know that there's somebody who can go over and check on their house, and it's usually me. I got one of my neighbors is going through a divorce. He's got a very big house, and he's like, "Hey, I'm out of town. Can you get the package off my porch? I don't want it stolen." Yes. Or I forgot to leave food out for the cat. Can you go check on the cat? Yes. Or there's an alarm going off at the house. Can you go see what it is? Yes. I'm happy to do it. Good neighbors. It's what neighbors do. You treat each other well. I say all that because there's a story in my neck of the woods where a man has lost his job. Mark Buzyk, Bouzyk, Mark Buzyk. He's a British educated co-founder and chief science officer at Aliyah Health. He's been ousted from his company. Why? Oh, because his wife was recorded shouting at their neighbor, David Lubin, calling him a Jewish slur, a corrupt Israeli, and claiming that, pay attention to this one, ladies and gentlemen, pay attention to this. This is the big one. Claiming that the man, their actual physical next door neighbor's daughter who was murdered deserved to die. That's right. His daughter Rose immigrated to Israel in 2021. They're a Jewish family. They're Americans. But his daughter Rose immigrated to Israel in 2021. And though she's an American citizen, she's also Jewish and signed up for Army duty in March of 2022. And in November of 2023, she was patrolling Jerusalem's Old City and was stabbed to death by a 16-year-old terrorist. She's 20. A 16-year-old terrorist stabbed her to death in Jerusalem's Old City. David posted stickers honoring her death on signage throughout his neighborhood in Dunwoody, Georgia. His neighbors are Anna and Mark Buzik, and Anna was videotaped telling David that his daughter deserved to die. And then subsequently said, quote, "I don't regret it," and insisted she would, quote, "say it 1,000,000 times again." Aliyah Health, I don't know. It's an AI-driven medical company. Decided that her husband need no longer work there. Now, apparently the husband has also, well, been as engaged as the wife. Well, maybe not quite as engaged as the wife, harassing the neighbor. Caught on tape. Y'all, I just, I'm sorry, but I don't feel sympathy for the man losing his job over his wife's behavior when he's been in on the antics to some degree as well. But how horrible is it? You're harassing your neighbor. Now, the Daily Mail has pictures in this couple's yard. They've got signs, "Palestine will always be Palestine," and "I stand with Palestine." They put these signs in their yard, but they were upset with the father putting up stickers around the neighborhood mourning the loss of his daughter. His daughter murdered by a terrorist, and these people are angry with the dad. I don't have any sympathy for these people. Anna spoke to a local news outlet and admitted she called David the K word and said, "I don't regret what I said. I'd say it 1,000,000 times again." She alleged that she intended to tell David he was vandalizing public property by placing his daughter's stickers around the community. She claimed things got heated after he branded her a Jew hater, which she said made my blood boil. Wait a second. So he calls her a Jew hater and she responds by calling him the K word and says his daughter deserved to die. I think he proved the point. He made me very angry. I called him the first word that came to my head. What's wrong with that? She called him the first word, which wasn't an SOB, which wasn't an a-hole, it was actually a slur for Jews. That was the first word that came to her mind. They just keep digging the hole and digging the hole and digging the hole and digging the hole. My goodness gracious. Guys, it is so much harder in this day and age to actually love your neighbor. It is. You got social media. People get very tribal. They work themselves up. They gotta show themselves. The tribe. We had a friend of mine was our guest pastor yesterday at church, and he said you gotta slander other people to prove your loyalty to your tribe. Now that's one of the things that is part of our politics these days. Is you gotta by belittling other people, you show your tribal loyalty. You show your stature by belittling others, by tearing them down. He's not wrong. How much better off we would be if we loved our neighbors. But I cannot fathom the level of depravity and hatred in a person's soul when your next door neighbor's daughter is murdered and you say they deserve to die. It's like I wouldn't wish my wife's cancer on my worst enemy. I wouldn't wish cancer on anyone. And yet these people are so broken. It's sad. They don't even recognize their brokenness. They're so broken, they think they're fixed. Is it even possible to have something so broken that you decide it's not broken. I don't. That's where we are with this, and it just up the street from me too, Dunwoody, Georgia. You've got a father whose daughter is murdered, and the neighbors are literally the wife of the one guy. The woman she deserved to die. I don't understand how anyone can think that that's something worth saying. I get a lot of hate. I get people who say your wife deserved cancer. I had a lady one time who speculated that my wife got cancer because I didn't back Trump in 2016, and this is God's way of calling me to account. The level of brokenness of people, and social media exposes so much of it these days. Love your neighbor, and it's not hard. Nobody said it would be easy. Nobody said it would be easy. It oftentimes is not easy. In fact, oftentimes it's very hard. Oftentimes your neighbor's a little off, but they think you're a little off. Oftentimes, you and your neighbor have nothing in common, but so few people know their actual physical neighbors these days. We were a better society. I have this long-running theory that we were a more stable society, not when it was the 50s or anything like that, but when we all had front porches. And everybody sat on their front porch at night, and the moms would stand outside and call their kids home when the street lights came on. Everybody kind of played together, and we didn't have 24/7 news, and we didn't have these computers in our pockets that kept us tethered to the internet all day so we could see what other people were saying online. So in my neighborhood back in the day, we had this one family, and the youngest son's name was Leslie. And my sisters and I, we still joke about that to this day, that when the sun was going down, you would inevitably hear his mother, Leslie, come home, Leslie. And if he wasn't home in about 30 minutes, everybody started getting knocks on the door. Have you seen Leslie? Have you seen Leslie? I mean, literally, this woman would stand at the edge of her yard every evening like a rooster crowing, Leslie, come home. To this day, my sisters and I still make jokes about it, just laughing that this was a part of our existence as children. Hearing Leslie's mom call him home every day at sunset as the street lights started coming on, and then going door to, if he didn't come home in sufficient time, she was going door to door to find which house he was in. Just. We lost something when we don't have front porches and stuff like this anymore. When you feel comfortable standing in your front yard telling your neighbor that his daughter deserved to be murdered, you are a horrible, horrible human being, and you need to hear someone tell you you're a horrible human being and you need help. What an awful, awful thing to do, and she cost her husband his job. Deservedly so, apparently, because he was in on some of the harassment as well. These things are happening in the 21st century in the United States because of the news of the day and where people stand. They're willing to look a man in the eye and tell him his daughter deserved to be murdered. That shouldn't happen, and yet it is happening, and it's a horrible, horrible thing. What gets into people? The brokenness of people. You know, Hillsdale College actually has a class on, brokenness and kind of the echoes and history and genesis and where this brokenness comes from. They've got some great classes, and they're all free of charge for you to take. You go to ericforhillsdale.com. They got a great one on the Federalist Papers right now. Each class, they're 30-minute videos. You can do them at your own pace. Some have 10, some have 12. It depends on the class you take, but each episode is about 30 minutes long. They're engaging, they're entertaining, and they're free for you to expand your horizons and your brain power. You go to ericforhillsdale.com, ERICK, ericforhillsdale.com. Not only that, you begin a relationship with Hillsdale College, you see what sets them apart, but you're getting useful, good knowledge and information as well. It's quality stuff from Hillsdale. Go to Eric, ERICK, ericforhillsdale.com. Sign up today with Hillsdale College. Find a class you're interested in. They got 40 to choose from, and just start getting smarter. A friend of mine texted me during that monologue and said, the other difficult thing here is that, the lady Anna, she's also the neighbor who's got to be loved, and that'll be a difficult one. But, yep, you got to love her, too, if she's your neighbor. Kim, you're going to be the last caller today. We got about a minute and a half. Welcome.
Thank you, Eric. Such a fan. Thanks so much for taking my call. Just wanted to say I'm not sure I agree with you on the reason that the Democrats do what they do. I think it's all for power and control. I do not think that they actually worship diversity other than using it as a tool to manipulate. They've been caught. They're exposed. They do not care about the perversion of children, the murder of children, like in Raleigh, and then just the example you just used. They don't care about minorities like the Jewish people. I just think they're exposed. I do not think they care about diversity. They're using it.
So I agree with you and I don't. I think they really do care about it, but I also think that they care about it for power. It is a way to control. And they really do believe that we are a systemically racist country and we need more diversity. But in that diversity comes their power to be able to control us. You suppress the white people voters in the Democrats' mind. Suddenly you have real diversity and you break down systemic racism. The problem for the Democrats is that they've so bought into this narrative, and it turns out not to be true, as you and I already knew, that as the Democrats get more white, the Republican Party is getting more diverse. By the way, there is breaking news from Cracker Barrel. I'm not making this up. Cracker Barrel announcing that they are no longer going to remove Uncle Herschel. He is the cracker with the barrel on the logo. He will stay on their menu, on their road signs, and be featured in the country store. He's not going anywhere. They want everyone to know that they're even going to have Uncle Herschel's favorite breakfast platter on the menu. He's family. While our logo and remodeling made headlines, our biggest focus is still where it belongs, in the kitchens and on your plate. So are they going to actually make the food good again? That's the problem with Cracker Barrel. Is the quality of the food has gone downhill. We stopped eating there a couple of years ago because my kids no longer liked the food, and my wife and I didn't either. And they took stuff off the menu we liked. The quality of the service and food at Cracker Barrel has gone downhill. The sign's just a symptom of a larger problem, but at least they're saying Uncle Herschel's going nowhere. I honestly didn't even know that was his name.